Hichkas, Yeruz Klub Miyad, a good day will come. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're talking to Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. His latest piece is online at the New Yorker magazine's News Desk blog. It's called Are Men in Iran? And it tells the story of a group still designated as terrorists by the State Department, the MEK, which was trained at the Department of Energy's Nevada National Site with its arid high plains and remote mountain peaks, has the look of northwest Iran. Sy Hersh, why the Department of Energy? And again, this is under the Bush administration. They're labeled terrorists, but they are training them, not only in communications, you point out.
They've had, there is a secret site. It's about 60-some-odd miles out of Las Vegas, deep in no man's land in southern Nevada, where we've been doing an awful lot of stuff for many years. There's it's called Site 12. That particular site, our CIA and other agencies have been training foreign troops. It's where I would guess when we do joint training with the special units of the Israeli army and other units that we train. We do train foreign soldiers. We can fly to this base. It's got a long landing strip, 7,500 feet, concrete landing strip. For a long time, it had yellow crosses on it, which meant for even aircraft, commercial aircraft in trouble, do not land here. And this is a strip that you come in and I presume you come in the military plane. You can turn off the transponder. No FAA's checking anything. Nobody's going to get a tail number. You can land, and there's a facility there. There's barracks and other facilities, and Site 12 and a food hall. It's all, you can actually find it online if you go through the Department of Energy's annual. They provide annual environmental impact reports, and they describe what's going on in each site in terms of the environment, and there you get a pretty good description. In fact, they actually use the word, there's a training facility used for other government agencies, an OGA, other government agencies, is a long-standing phrase that means the CIA, essentially, actually specifically to people on the inside. So there's been training there forever, and it just so happens, if you take a look at northwest Iran and take a look at the topography in that part of the desert in Nevada. It's a very arid area, I think 15 inches of rain or something like that a year. It's got a desert, it's got valleys, it's got mountain ranges, and it really is similar. I'll tell you what the most frightening thing was. When they first began the training, one very senior four-star officer was called by somebody who knew about the training in Nevada, very worried about it. And because the Joint Special Operations Command people were training in not only in communications and cryptography, small unit tactics, but other cute things, which to me, of course, and to my friend, meant interrogation tactics. You know, how to, you know, I don't know this, but I presume included the standard sort of horrible stuff that we know American intelligence agencies have, and CIA and other personnel have done to various prisoners of war since 9/11, waterboarding and the like. It was very troubling, that message, that this kind of training is being done on a group that's listed as a terrorist group.
Meanwhile,
but so it goes.
And yet so many public officials, Bush and Republican and Democrats, are calling for them to be taken off the list. Among the U.S. officials to speak in support of MEK is former Vermont Governor Howard Dean. Speaking to CNN last year, he said the U.S. should lift the terror group designation to help protect MEK members living in Iraq.
The FBI screened all these people. The FBI counterterrorist folks screened all these people in 2006. Not one of them is a terrorist. According to our FBI, this is outrageous what's going on. It's an outrageous behavior by the State Department, and frankly, the administration has direct responsibility for making sure that the promises were kept. We kept one promise. That is, we kept George Bush's promise to get out by the end of 2011. We need to keep the promise of the people to Ashraf. We ought not to be complicit in human rights massacres.
Among those appearing at the public event in Washington on Friday in support of the MEK was Mitchell Reese, a foreign policy advisor to Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney. He acknowledged to the crowd that the Treasury Department considers MEK supporters, quote, potential criminals. At a campaign stop in New Hampshire last year, an audience member asked Romney about Reese's support for the MEK.
Have you heard of, or do you support the MEK?
I have not heard of the MEK, and so I can't possibly tell you whether I support the MEK. But I can. All right. But what is the MEK? Why would you think that I supported it? You said it's a terrorist group?
There's a terrorist group in Iran which is virulently violent. It's attacked civilians before. It's called the MEK, the People's Mujahideen of Iran. And if you look into it, some of your staff members, I believe, have made statements to lobby the executive branch to remove them from the terrorist list.
I'll take a look at the issue. I'm not familiar with that particular group or that effort on the part of any of my team.
That was Mitt Romney being questioned about his foreign policy advisor Mitchell Reese's support for the MEK. Seymour Hersh, your response.
Well, I would say that the Obama administration has even more trouble than Mr. Romney does. It's clear he didn't know much about it. This administration knows an awful lot about it because they have access to what was going on in the previous administration in this area in terms of the MEK, in terms of operations inside Iran, and they're still going on. And so the question then becomes, I'm amazed that we've had nothing from the White House about this story, and there's also been sort of I shouldn't complain about it because I understand it. It's not invented here syndrome, but I'm a little amazed that more reporters aren't asking more questions about this because it seems to be so egregious. This is right now our Treasury Department is actually asking questions because no matter how you cut it, it's a terrorist group, and if you're aiding and supporting a terrorist group under the law of the United States, as you know, there's been some prosecutions in this area of people of Middle East descent supporting groups that we consider to be terrorists, and they get put away in jail. There certainly seems to be a double standard here at work, and Romney seems lost in space on this issue, but I can assure you right now there are people in this White House who are not.
Is the Obama administration still training MEK?
I don't think the word is training anymore, because are we directly training them down in Nevada? No, I don't. There's no reason to believe that. I don't know that. I've been told that there is more stuff going on than we know of course, and that's also possible. You know, one of the things that I've learned, I've been doing a book about Cheney for a number of years. It's just amazing how many things we really don't know about what our government can do. There are amazing things out there that happen that we just don't know about. And so they can keep secrets. Of course, the government would like to keep pressure on Iran as much as it can. And I don't think we can totally walk away from responsibility in terms of, at the minimum, we've been providing intelligence that we know goes to the MEK. And also to other dissident groups inside Iran. Does that mean we're aiding and abetting in the specific killing of somebody? No, I have no reason to believe that anybody can make that case. But what the hell are we doing in there? Why are we putting so much pressure? Why do we take so much pleasure in bombings and explosions that take place inside Iran, which may be linked to us? And I just don't quite understand the policy. It's certainly not one that's conducive to having good negotiations in good faith.
The latest news that nuclear talks in Turkey are taking place. Talk about how the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has found what they have found in relation to the nuclear program, and also Mohammed al-Baradei. In a minute, we're going to be speaking to Sharif Abdel-Quddus. Mohammed al-Baradei, who is the Nobel Prize-winning head of the IAEA, was going to run for president of Egypt, then pulled out. But what he had to do with information that came from the MEK.
Well, very early, the MEK was the first group to announce that that they had discovered in 2002. They had a news conference, and by the way, at that point, they were considered, the MEK were always considered a cult group, very fringe, marginal, irrational group. They've been involved in the 70s, so we believe, in the killing of some Americans inside Iran. And they were a Marxist, leftist group in opposition to the Shah that couldn't connect with the mullahs, the religious mullahs that took over Khomeini in those days. They couldn't connect with them, and they began a protracted struggle in which murder was all over the place, both sides killing each other, very brutal stuff. And so they were always considered to be outside the normal realm of groups. It's suddenly in 2002 they get a lot of street credibility because they announced that the Iranians are building a nuclear facility. They didn't say they were enriching uranium there, but it was clear from the import of what they said. The only reason they're getting involved in building a facility for nuclear production was for weaponization. And I was told at the time that Israel was behind that intelligence, that it really didn't come from the MEK themselves. Israel, as you know, there were what, something like 1.5 million Iranian Jews, many of whom fled the country when the Shah fell. And Israel still has a pretty good net of intelligence net inside Iran. So it wasn't illogical. And I began to see Mr. El-Baradei, the Director General of the IAEA, pretty regularly, certainly at least once a year, and talked to a lot of people there in Vienna about what was going on in terms of nuclear development around the world. And this is a wise man. We didn't like him because he's Egyptian, but that was a big mistake. He turned out to be, he was enraged at Iran when I first began to talk to him about it. He thought they cheated. He was quite angry. But he also told me, I told him, we talked about the fact that I had heard that the Israelis were involved in providing that intelligence, and he also had heard the same thing. And in fact, before this article was published online for the New Yorker, the fact-checkers went back to his office, to his secretary, and once again reminded him of that conversation and got his permission to say something he wouldn't let me say earlier, which is that he had provided me with that information too. So Israel's had a tremendous role in supporting the MEK. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel was also deeply involved in helping us or abetting with the training inside in Nevada. That would make a lot of sense. And Israel certainly is a key player right now in the MEK activities, along with us, and for many years along with the Brits, who were also involved in providing signals intelligence inside Iran, or collecting intelligence. The good thing about having Britain around is they're actually more hated than we are in the Middle East because of their long history of exploitation. That's always a plus. But having said that, Baradei's been he's been a very neutral arbiter of what was going on, very critical of Iran for many years. He eventually turned, his position churned as he learned more, as the Iranians trusted him more, began to talk more to him and his people. And what we now have is, he left a few years back, we have a new Director General, a Japanese sort of center-right politician named Amato, who is different. He's much closer to us. There's been WikiLeaks cables released by Julian Assange that show very clearly that we helped him get elected as Director General. It's a UN agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, that El-Baradei had for so many years. It's UN, and the new leader was voted. I think there were 7 ballots, and it was our ability to swing some votes that got Amano the job, and he immediately told us how he would be different about Iran, et cetera. There's a whole series of WikiLeaks cables about this that Julian's group released that are pretty devastating, that aren't enough in the American currency. They're there. They were published widely in the British press, but not here. We really need to take a look at this relationship, because it raises a lot of questions just about, I'll be honest, I'm not sure we come into negotiations with very clean hands on this, and we begin negotiations really behind the 8 ball with the Iranians, because they are very deeply involved. They have very good intelligence. They know what we've been doing. Despite all this talk you have about Iranians being involved inside Afghanistan right now, and all this talk about Iranians being involved inside Iraq and killing Americans, there's never been much of a case for that. And I will tell you right now, after 9/11, the Iranians were absolutely willing to work with us, particularly against al-Qaeda. Don't forget, Iran's Shia and al-Qaeda are mostly Sunni fanatics, and there was no love lost. And they actually, in the first 6 months or so after 9/11, they closed their borders and captured a lot of al-Qaeda that were being driven out of the country by us. And they were looking for refuge in Iran, and they've been jailed. I think they're still there in jail, over 100 of them. And so we really blew a chance by putting them on the axis of evil. I'd sure like to do a takeover of American history after 9/11. I think the history books are going to be as bad as we think it is. It's worse.
Seymour Hersh, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for The New Yorker. His latest piece is online at their news desk blog. It's called Are Men and